Good afternoon. I wanted to hop on here today on this lovely Monday and have a conversation about something I'm seeing happening throughout Brevard County. So, as many of you know, we had a major win last week. Titusville decided to step up and hold the chemical manufacturers for PFAS accountable for contaminating their water. So I'm finally having some time to catch up from being in Tallahassee and Washington, D.C., and at various colleges speaking lately. And I'm catching up on the Save Our Indian River Lagoon meeting. And towards the very end of the last meeting on October 20th, PFAS got mentioned. PFAS was also mentioned at the Brevard County delegation meeting. And I find this very interesting, and I think that this should be on the community's radar. And I'll tell you why in a minute, but I want to share this clip with you of the conversation.
And then the last one is another piece that continues to move forward is regulation of PFAS and the potential classification of PFAS as a CERCLA chemical. That has significant implications to local governments, and if there is no exemptions for local governments, could represent a huge cost burden on local governments rather than on the original chemical manufacturer. So I encourage the county again to maintain active participation in that CERCLA liability exemption for local governments, because if we end up having to divert funds into something that
Okay, so he goes on to talk about that. I'll put the full clip up in a separate video into our groups. The reason why this is so important is because he's wrong on a lot of those points. And I think he needs to double check what he's saying, because he's kind of trying to put fear into our local government and into people regarding this PFAS liability. Now, he's talking about CERCLA, which is also known as the Superfund law. And it was designed by Congress to identify those responsible for contaminating the environment and endangering public health, to hold them accountable for cleanups. If responsible parties refuse to clean up contamination, the Environmental Protection Agency is authorized to conduct the cleanup itself and recover the cost from responsible parties. Now, that responsible party, in my opinion, would be 3M, DuPont, the makers of perfluorinated compounds. Now you have our local governments, though. That was the Save Our Indian River Lagoon representative speaking on it, worried that the county, that the cities, that government representatives are going to be held accountable, that our utilities will be held accountable. And that's not the case at all. As we all know, PFAS poses a serious risk to the environment and human health. We have PFAS contamination throughout Brevard County. We had the third highest levels of perfluorinated compounds detected in the Department of Defense report in 2018. Now, what he's speaking on is something that's happening on a federal level in Washington, D.C. I was literally there speaking on this. And so everything that he just said goes against what we were advocating for in Washington, D.C., which is this designation of the CERCLA or Superfund designation for PFAS. This would allow cleanup of the contamination. So what he's advocating for is creating loopholes in our federal pollution cleanup laws for some PFAS polluters. That'll stick taxpayers with cleanup costs and eliminate incentives for PFAS polluters to avoid discharging even more PFAS pollution. So he's talking about how it's going to cost taxpayers if the county has to divert funds into cleaning up PFAS. First of all, what is so wrong with using funds to clean up PFAS? Are you saying that you do not believe that PFAS contamination is really a big deal, even though it's impacting the health of your community? It has been connected to so many health issues, and there's more papers coming out about it. This is probably one of the most studied chemicals in our time. They have linked it to various cancers. They have linked it to kidney issues. They've shown that it passes the placenta in pregnant women. We've had a lot of people that have had miscarriages and issues in their pregnancies, babies born with heart defects. And you're saying, well, we don't want to be, responsible or accountable for this. I think that they need to look a lot further into it. Not only is this is opening the door for industries to lobby for exemptions, not just for PFAS. So what he's saying is, if DC doesn't put exemptions in for the utilities and airports and other polluted sites, because these are sites that used AFFF firefighting foam, that he wants them to be exempted from any kind of responsibility because they're afraid that they're going to go after these people. But the reality of it is, it's the makers of PFAS that will be held accountable. And it's the chemical company itself who is telling local governments like ours, our county commissioners, that is telling utilities, they are scaring the utilities because they want the utilities up in DC lobbying against this Superfund designation. It is the chemical companies that are advocating for that. So essentially, his commentary is supporting the chemical industry's narrative. I also want to show you the delegation meeting, the recent one, of Councilwoman Gibson, who lives in the city of Satellite Beach, who took part in the Sunshine Law violation, who blocked us out of a publicly posted meeting, also talking about this.
That we are looking for liability protection. And the big ask of that is that we did not create this chemical. There may be instances where by use of the city or firefighting or a training facility may have contaminated the ground, but this is because we were required to use AFFF firefighting foams. And we are protecting not just our liability, but the taxpayers' liability. And this is something that even the federal government is looking at as well, because there's already a cottage industry of lawyers and attorneys that are stacking up, getting ready to place lawsuits all over the place. So we would ask.
Oh my goodness. So now we're seeing cities throughout Brevard County. We're seeing the county. Now we're seeing the Save Our Indian River Lagoon group. And out of all of the people, they should have consulted with Fight for Zero, myself. We have other cities working alongside us, collaborating. We do have some government entities in other cities throughout Brevard and the state that have sat with us on these issues. But I don't know, it kind of seems reactionary in my opinion, because it feels like they don't really know all the full story. They're getting one side of the story, probably from the chemical manufacturers that are pushing out this narrative that, you better get on board with us or you're going to be paying a lot of money for this cleanup. And you'll notice that on both parts, in both of those videos, they bring up how it's going to cost taxpayers. Guess what? It's already costing taxpayers. They have been using PFAS chemicals since the 1970s. They knew it was harming the environment. They knew it was harming our health. The Department of Defense also knew. The chemical companies and Department of Defense both knew that this was going on. This has been costing taxpayers in their health. The ultimate cost, by shortening our lifespans, by giving us an unhealthy community that also plays into our economy. Our economy is impacted by health issues like this. If you get cancer, it's a lot harder to work a job, okay? So I would argue that this has already cost taxpayers money. But I also want to bring up a couple key points about this specifically that he brought up as far as the loophole, the Superfund law. So in the 43-year history of our Superfund cleanup law, Congress has never created a chemical-specific loophole and should not start now. Because if they start, like I previously stated, other polluters, other chemical companies, other people who have contaminated our waterways, our land, our air, will also start asking for loopholes. We do not want that. We want them to be held accountable to clean up their mess. If we create a loophole for PFAS polluters, other toxic chemical polluters will surely be seeking their own loopholes, not just for PFAS, for other very harmful chemicals. Congress should reject efforts efforts made by the chemical companies. And now they're convincing our county commissioners, they're convincing certain city representatives, they're convincing other government affiliated individuals that they should have loopholes, but that Congress should reject that because it's giving in to the PFAS polluters to not clean up their mess. So I wanted to bring this up. I have a long page about it. I will post that other video separately. I believe Jeff posted the Gibson video from the delegation meeting. The best way that you guys can help us, and I'll try to do a summary about this, exemption to the Superfund law that they are trying to get on a federal level. It's an uphill fight. These chemical companies do not want to be held accountable for what they've done to our communities. So I don't know if I have any more to add to that, but I can do a summary. We'll do something in the advocate's voice. We'll put both of those videos up. I think the county really needs to look at what's going on because their messaging isn't matching up. We've talked to Posey on numerous occasions. He even just signed on to a bipartisan bill regarding PFAS. So I'm not understanding how or why he would be on board with exempting the very polluter that should be held accountable. We've already explained to Congress that the utilities and the airports are not to be held liable for this, and the other places. It's the chemical manufacturers. And so I just think there's a disconnect there. I think there's a reactionary thing going on because, as Mindy stated, yes, there are attorneys that are involved in this, and there is discussions of personal injury toxic tort lawsuit, as there should be for the families who have been impacted, the firefighters who were directly in contact with these chemicals, the kids who the firefighters put firefighting foam all over the ground for them to play in, not knowing how harmful this firefighting foam with PFAS was in it. They should have a legal avenue and a choice. And if they want to take that avenue, that's why we are providing that resource for them to have those conversations, to ask those questions of people that navigate the legal world. It's just, I think that maybe they saw that was a discussion happening as far as PFAS goes, and now they're getting scared and they're being reactionary. They're not doing their homework. They're not really looking into what this Superfund designation would do for a community like ours. Either way, taxpayers are cleaning up for the mess. We're cleaning up these PFAS chemicals, but we're also cleaning up the Indian River Lagoon, and we're impacted by our health. So we're paying the ultimate cost through healthcare bills with our own health. So I don't think the taxpayers are going to be so worried about investing in this cleanup. They already have. If it means protecting our children, we have PFBA in the school's drinking water. It was detected in 13 beachside schools. We don't even know if it's in Mims Elementary. I did put in a request that they test Mims Elementary. PFAS is being found in Mims drinking water. That's a problem. And they should get on board with a PFAS settlement as well. Because again, the manufacturers should have the responsibility to test, not only pay for testing. I don't believe that our city should be paying for that. They should be paying that cost. And they should also be paying to filter that drinking water and ensuring that our communities, and especially the most vulnerable population and children who are the most susceptible to this contamination, should be covered. They should have filters in the schools. They should be able to update the water treatment facility so that they are not being negatively impacted. These are chemicals that build up in your body. It's not like you drink it and you pee it out. These are chemicals that are known as forever chemicals for a reason. So with that being said, I have to get off here, but thank you all for tuning in. If you watch this, please share your thoughts.